If you've been watching anime for a while, you've probably noticed something weird. Why are there so many damn high schools? Doesn't matter if it's fantasy, sci-fi, or even the end of the world, there's always a school. In 2024 alone, 253 anime were released, and 93 of them took place in or focused on school. That's nearly 40%, which means if you only watched 2 anime that year, odds are one of them was a school anime. So why is Japan so obsessed with high schools? What major event happened in the 90s that caused this obsession? And what dark reality hides behind all these school animes? First, let's address why specifically high school and not universities or junior high. Well, that's easy. High school hits the sweet spot. Characters have enough freedom to get into interesting situations without needing constant adult supervision. You don't have to make as many excuses about how someone managed to go to a party at night, for example, but they're still bound by enough structure that writers can easily create scenarios where everyone interacts. Sports festivals, cultural events, mandatory classes, these force all characters together naturally, which helps create that sense of friendship and camaraderie that the Japanese love to put in their stories. Try doing that in university, where everyone has different schedules, and let's be honest, sometimes it can feel kinda lonely. But more importantly, high school is the last educational experience almost every Japanese person shares. About 90% attend high school, but only 45% go to university. So if you set your anime in university, you've just cut your potential audience in half. So now we know why high school, but that raises another question. Why the obsession with putting it in everything? Let's start with the obvious. Initially, this made perfect sense. Anime began in the 1960s with Astro Boy, targeting children. Kids naturally relate to school settings. It's their world. But there's something deeper here. School represents the ultimate safe fantasy. You get all the excitement of adventure with the security of knowing there are safety nets. Teachers protect you, meals are provided, and your biggest worry isn't paying rent, but passing the next exam. It's like a roller coaster, thrilling, but ultimately safe. This isn't uniquely Japanese. Harry Potter, Grease, and even Spider-Man, who stayed in high school for most of his movie appearances, prove this is a universal fantasy. But here's where Japan differs. While, for example, American heroes like Superman and Batman are adults dealing with adult problems, Japanese protagonists like Naruto, Yuji from Jujutsu Kaisen, and Luffy from One Piece remain teenagers throughout most of their stories. And even when they're not literally in school, they're school-aged. As anime's original child audience grew up, the industry discovered something brilliant. High school stories work as aspirational content for younger kids, making them feel mature, while triggering nostalgia for older viewers. It's marketing genius. One setting appeals to multiple groups. And now, with that context, we can get into the most important reason why Japan has this obsession with high school. And for that, we need to quickly understand an event that happened in the 90s. You probably know about it if you've been following for a while, which you should. Please subscribe. But long story short, in the 1980s, Japan was an economic superpower, rivaling the United States and inspiring the same awe China does today. Then, 1990 hit like a sledgehammer. The stock market crashed 43% in a single year. Businesses collapsed, unemployment soared, and major corporations stopped hiring entirely for several years. This created a devastating problem. You see, Japanese culture puts a heavy focus on work and work culture, so much so that they even have this word karoshi, which can be translated as death by overwork. The thing is that the big Japanese companies traditionally only hire recent university graduates. If you graduated during the crash, you missed your one chance at a stable, well-paying job. By the time hiring resumed, you were no longer a recent graduate, forcing you into part-time or low-paying work, preventing you from having a house, a family, or moving out of your parents' house. And now add the death of the emperor, and later the sarin train attacks, an event that, still to this day, despite happening 30 years ago, is still very present in Japanese society. Putting all this trauma together gave birth to things like the hikikomori phenomenon. You know, those people who haven't left their house for years by their own choice that you see in a lot of anime like Konosuba. As of 2025, it's estimated that 1.5 million Japanese people are hikikomori. This context explains the sudden surge of existentialist and depressive anime manga in the 1990s, like Evangelion, Berserk, or Lane. And in the middle of all this came out a little anime you may have heard of. It's called Evangelion. I have other videos talking about this in more detail, but the only thing you need to know for this discussion is that Evangelion was extremely successful. It was the first TV anime, meaning it was broadcast on normal television during prime time, the time slot for a general audience, that targeted otakus and anime fans. And its success was so big that everyone started copying or drawing inspiration from Eva. And that's not all. Evangelion used a novel financing system for the time called a production committee, which, without getting too deep into how it works, you just need to know that it was modified and used in future anime to turn most anime into tools for selling things like DVDs, toys, figures, and any other type of merchandise. In other words, they were anime made not for the general public like most anime before Evangelion. I know things like OVAs existed, but those were for a very small audience. But for otakus and anime fans, who are the ones willing to spend more money on their favorite series? You just need to know that an anime Blu-ray in Japan with only 2 episodes of an anime series costs an average of $90. So if you wanted the entire series and the anime in question is 12 episodes, you're expected to spend $540. And it's not rare for a series to sell tens of thousands of DVDs and Blu-rays, so it's not something that's just made for a few collectors, but rather many fans are expected to buy them, and the industry actually relies on that. But to wrap up, what I want to get at is that thanks to all these changes, the anime industry began to focus more and more on these ultra fans. Ultra fans who, due to everything that happened in Japan in the 90s, increasingly felt isolated and depressed as they felt their future had been stolen from them and that the outside world wasn't safe in many cases. And if you add to that the fact that Japanese society is collectivist, meaning that unlike a country like the USA, where there's much focus on the individual, in Japan, there's more focus on the collective, in some cases even punishing someone for standing out. There's even a saying that, although its meaning is different, serves very well to exemplify the type of society Japan can sometimes be. The nail that sticks out gets hammered down. So in this societies which tends to put the needs of the many before one's own, it's very easy for someone to feel isolated and depressed, since in many cases, the well-being of others matters more than your own. All this means that although initially having so many high schools appear in anime and manga was just a matter of the audience watching those stories being in school, when this audience grew up and continued consuming anime and manga, aka anime otakus, eventually the industry shifted to focus more and more on what these otakus wanted. And a lot of what they wanted was an escapist story that would take them away from the outside world and their stressful dead-end jobs, and that would remind them of their golden years, when they didn't have as many worries and didn't feel as lonely because they had friends and felt they were part of a group when dreams and hopes were abundant. In other words, high school.